In the desolate Norfolk marshes, a radio tower stands silent, its beacon pulsing with secrets. When operator Samuel Trent is found dead in a locked room, electrocuted by a tampered console, a cryptic midnight broadcast, Alpha 7, shadow falls. Midnight calls, echoes through the night. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, unravels a web of deception. A bitter colleague, a cunning spy, a nervous technician, each hiding motives of pride, betrayal, and espionage. As the clues converge, drugged tea, a hidden key, coded signals, Poirot sets a trap to catch a killer whose perfect crime is no match for his little grey cells. Will the tower's final signal reveal the truth before it's too late? Chapter 1. The Tower of Silence. The Norfolk night was sharp and unforgiving, a biting wind slicing across the flat, desolate marshes, carrying the faint tang of salt from the distant sea. Hercule Poirot, wrapped in his heavy overcoat, adjusted his scarf with a fastidious flick of his gloved fingers, his moustache bristling against the cold. Beside him, Captain Hastings trudged along, his breath visible in the moonlight, muttering about the unearthly stillness of the place. "It's like walking into a ghost story, Poirot," he said, glancing at the skeletal outline of the radio tower ahead, its single red beacon pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. They had been summoned by a telegram from Inspector Japp, urgent and cryptic, requesting Poirot's presence at this remote outpost. The tower, a relic of wartime communications, stood alone on a low rise, surrounded by reeds that whispered in the wind. Its iron framework loomed, a stark silhouette against the silvered sky, and Hastings shivered, not entirely from the cold. "What's Japp got us into this time?" he wondered aloud. At the base of the tower, Japp awaited them, his face etched with the strain of a long night. His overcoat was rumpled, and his eyes darted upward to the tower's summit. "Good of you to come, Poirot," he said, shaking hands briskly. "It's a bad business. Murder, plain and simple, but the how of it's got me stumped." "Murder?" Poirot's voice was calm, his green eyes gleaming with interest. "Tell me, mon ami, what has occurred?" Japp led them up the narrow spiral staircase, the clang of their steps echoing in the hollow structure. Samuel Trent, radio operator, found dead in the control room at the top. Door locked from the inside, no sign of a struggle, and a queer message broadcast just before midnight. The locals are spooked, calling it a cursed place. The control room was a cramped, circular chamber, its walls lined with humming equipment and flickering dials. A single bulb cast harsh light over the scene. Samuel Trent's body slumped over the console, his head resting on a panel of switches, one hand outstretched, a faint burn mark marring his palm. The air held a metallic tang, mingled with the musty scent of old wiring. Poirot's gaze swept the room with methodical precision. A half-empty teacup, its contents cold, a notepad scribbled with numbers, 3, 7, 12, seemingly random, and the transmitter still emitting a low, eerie hum. Poirot knelt beside the body, his movements deliberate, almost reverent. "This burn," he murmured, examining Trent's hand. "It is not from fire, non." He glanced at Japp, who shook his head. "Coroner's not sure yet, but it looks like a shock. Electrocution, maybe. We'll know more soon." Poirot nodded, rising to inspect the door. It was heavy, steel-reinforced, with a sturdy bolt slid firmly into place. He tested it, finding no give. "And the key?" he asked. "In Trent's pocket," Japp replied, producing a small iron key. "Only one for this lock, far as we know. No windows, no other exits, just this room, sealed tight. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. It's impossible, then. No one could get in or out. Unless... He hesitated, his imagination stirring. A secret passage? Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile. Always the romantic, Hastings. No, the solution is not so fantastical. The little grey cells, they will find the answer in the facts. He turned to the console, his fingers brushing the frayed edge of a wire near the transmitter. This message you mentioned, Inspector. What did it say? Japp handed him a slip of paper, the words typed in haste. Alpha, 7, shadow falls. Midnight calls. Poirot read it twice, his brow furrowing. Most curious, he said softly. A code, perhaps, or a signal to someone waiting. We must learn who was meant to hear it. He paced the small room, his steps measured, his mind already weaving through possibilities. The teacup caught his eye again, its saucer slightly askew. He lifted it, sniffing the faint residue. Tea, yes, but something else, perhaps. He set it down carefully, marking it for Japp's attention. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the tower's frame. Hastings glanced nervously at the walls, as if expecting them to betray some hidden truth. It's a grim place to die, Poirot, he said. All alone up here. Alone? Poirot's voice was sharp, his eyes narrowing. That, mon ami, remains to be seen. Murder is rarely a solitary act. He turned to Japp. Who worked with this Monsieur Trent? Who had access to this tower? Japp sighed. 3 others, mainly. Margaret Voss, another operator. Sharp woman, bit of a temper. Victor Klein, a journalist, foreign chap. Been poking around the tower lately. And Ernest Dobbs, the technician who keeps the equipment running. We're rounding them up now. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the names. Good. Tomorrow we shall speak with them. For now, this room must be sealed. Every detail, every wire, every mark. It speaks. If we listen. He cast a final glance at Trent's body, the man's lifeless eyes staring into the void. This tower, Poirot said, almost to himself. It has sent its last signal for Monsieur Trent. But for Hercule Poirot, the mystery has only begun. As they descended the staircase, the beacon above blinked on, casting its red glow across the marshes, a silent witness to the night's dark secrets. Chapter 2. The 3 Suspects. The morning sun struggled to pierce the heavy mist that clung to the Norfolk marshes, casting a pallid glow over the village of Thornwick. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, sat in the small, oak-panelled office of the radio station, a stone's throw from the tower where Samuel Trent had met his untimely end. The room smelled faintly of ink and dust, its walls adorned with faded maps and a schedule of broadcast shifts. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, stood by the window, gazing out at the bleak landscape, his face etched with unease. "It's a grim business, Poirot," he remarked, turning from the view. "A locked tower, a dead man, and that eerie message. It's like something out of a penny, dreadful." Poirot, seated at a polished table, adjusted his tie with a precise flick of his fingers. "A penny? Dreadful, mon ami. No, this is a puzzle of the human mind, and it is the little grey cells that will unravel it." His green eyes gleamed with anticipation as Inspector Japp entered, followed by 3 figures whose presence filled the room with an undercurrent of tension. Japp, his face weary from a sleepless night, gestured to the trio. "Here they are, Poirot, the only ones with regular access to the tower. Margaret Voss, Victor Klein, and Ernest Dobbs. I've had them brought in for questioning, as you asked." Poirot rose, his small stature somehow commanding the room. He studied each suspect in turn, his gaze sharp as a scalpel. "Merci, Inspector. Let us proceed with order and method. A murder has been committed, and one among you may hold the key to its truth, whether by intent or by accident." His voice, though soft, carried a weight that made the air seem heavier. Margaret Voss was the first to step forward, her posture rigid, her dark eyes flashing with defiance. A woman in her late 30s, she wore a practical woolen skirt and a blouse buttoned to the collar, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her hands, clasped before her, betrayed no tremor, but Poirot noted the faint tightening of her jaw. She was a code-breaker by trade, Japp had explained, with a reputation for brilliance and a temper to match. "I've nothing to hide," she said, her voice clipped. "I was at the Hare and Hound last night, as half the village can tell you. Samuel Trent was a fool, but I didn't kill him." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching slightly. "A fool, Mademoiselle Voss? A strong word. Perhaps you will enlighten Hercule Poirot as to why you thought so." Margaret's lips pursed. He was careless, always leaving the transmitter on, garbling signals, making my work harder. We argued, yes, but murder? I'd sooner break his equipment than his neck. Her tone was sharp, but her eyes flickered, as if guarding a thought she did not wish to share. Next was Victor Klein, a man whose polished exterior seemed at odds with the rural setting. Tall and lean, with slicked-back hair and a face that might have been handsome were it not for its guarded expression, he carried himself with the ease of someone accustomed to scrutiny. His accent, faintly Eastern European, was difficult to place, and his papers, Japp had confided, were suspiciously impeccable. "I am a journalist, Monsieur Poirot," Klein said, his voice smooth as polished glass. "I was researching the tower's history, its role in the war, you know. Fascinating stuff. I visited Trent yesterday afternoon, but I was long gone by midnight. I was at my lodgings, writing." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And what, Monsieur Klein, did you discuss with Monsieur Trent?" "A man does not visit a radio tower for idle curiosity, none." Klein smiled, a practiced gesture that revealed nothing. "We talked about the mechanics of broadcasting, frequencies, signals, that sort of thing. He was cooperative. I left by 6 o'clock. You can check with the station log." The third figure, Ernest Dobbs, seemed to shrink under Poirot's gaze. A wiry man in his 40s, with thinning hair and a perpetually anxious expression, he clutched a worn cap in his hands, twisting it nervously. As the tower's technician, he was responsible for its maintenance, yet his demeanor suggested a man ill at ease with responsibility. "I wasn't there, sir," he stammered, his eyes darting to Japp. "I mean, not at midnight. I was home, asleep. My wife, she'll tell you. Well, she was asleep too, but I was there, I swear." Poirot's expression remained unreadable. "And yet, Monsieur Dobbs, your tools were found in the tower. Is it not your duty to maintain the equipment? Perhaps you were there more recently than you claim." Dobbs's face reddened. "I left them there a few days ago. Forgot to take 'em home. I'm always in and out, fixing things. The transmitter's old, always acting up. But I didn't touch Trent." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. "Each of you," he said, his voice measured, "had the means to know Monsieur Trent's habits, his shifts, his routines. Each of you had access to the tower. And each of you, I suspect, has a story that is not yet complete." He paused, letting the words settle like dust. You may go, for now, but Hercule Poirot will speak with you again." As the suspects filed out, Margaret's stride brisk, Klein's measured, and Dobbs's almost a scuttle, Hastings turned to Poirot. "Well, what do you make of them? That Klein fellow seems slippery, and Voss has a temper. Dobbs is nervous as a cat, but that doesn't mean he's guilty." Poirot tapped his temple. "The little grey cells, Hastings. They are already at work. Mademoiselle Voss speaks with conviction, but her eyes betray a secret. Monsieur Klein is too composed, too prepared, and Monsieur Dobbs, his fear is genuine. But is it of guilt or of discovery? We must dig deeper." Japp, lighting a cigarette, leaned against the desk. "I've got my money on Klein. Foreign chap, always poking about. Locals say he's been seen near military posts, asking questions. Could be a spy, Poirot. Trent might have caught him snooping." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A spy, perhaps. But murder requires more than motive. It requires opportunity. The locked room, the electrocution, the cryptic message, these are not the work of a careless man. We must examine the tower again, and we must learn more of Trent himself." The trio made their way to the Hare and Hound, the village pub where Margaret claimed to have spent the evening. The landlord, a stout man named Perkins, was polishing glasses behind the bar, his face ruddy from years of ale and wind. "Aye, Miss Voss was here," he confirmed, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Came in around 8, stayed till near 11, had a pint, maybe 2, kept to herself, mostly, reading some book." Poirot's eyes brightened. "Reading, you say? Did she leave the pub at any point?" Perkins scratched his chin. "Come to think of it, she stepped out for a bit. Said she needed air. Must have been around 9:30. Back before 10, I'd wager." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. "That's time enough to get to the tower and back," he whispered. Poirot nodded but said nothing, his mind clearly elsewhere. They next visited Klein's lodgings, a modest room above the village bakery. The landlady, Mrs. Grover, a woman with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes, confirmed Klein's alibi. "He was in all evening, typing away on that machine of his. I heard the clatter till late. Didn't go out, not that I saw." Poirot thanked her, his gaze lingering on a stack of newspapers in Klein's room, their headlines focused on wartime technology. "A journalist with a keen interest in signals," he murmured to Hastings. "Or perhaps something more." Dobbs's home was a small cottage on the village's edge, its garden overgrown with weeds. His wife, a pale woman with tired eyes, was vague about his whereabouts. "Ernest was home, I think," she said, wringing her hands. "I went to bed early. He's always working late, fixing things." Her uncertainty was palpable, and Poirot noted it without comment. Back at the inn, Poirot sat by the fire, sipping a tisane, his eyes distant. Hastings, restless, paced the room. "It's a tangle, Poirot. Voss could have slipped out. Klein's story is too neat, and Dobbs is hiding something. But that locked room. How did any of them do it?" Poirot set down his cup. "The locked room, Hastings, is not the mystery. It is the method. The killer wished us to believe it impossible. But nothing is impossible to Hercule Poirot. The burn on Trent's hand, the frayed wire, the teacup, these are the threads of the tapestry. We must also consider the message. Alpha, 7, shadow falls. Midnight calls. It was sent for a purpose, perhaps to mislead, perhaps to signal another." He rose, his movements brisk. "Tomorrow we return to the tower. I wish to see the consul again, and I must speak with the coroner. The manner of Trent's death, electrocution, is no accident. Someone with knowledge of the tower's workings arranged it. And we must learn more of Trent's life. Who was he to these people? A colleague, a rival, a pawn? Hastings yawned, the hour growing late. You think one of them's lying, don't you? Poirot's smile was faint. All of them are lying, mon ami, in their own way. It is the nature of secrets. But Hercule Poirot will find the truth, hidden though it may be in the shadows of this tower. As the fire crackled and the wind howled outside, Poirot's mind turned over the details. Margaret's absence from the pub, Klein's too-perfect alibi, Dobbs's nervous denial. The cryptic broadcast echoed in his thoughts, a puzzle within a puzzle. Somewhere in the interplay of motive and opportunity, the killer waited, believing their crime impenetrable. But Poirot knew better. The Tower of Silence would speak, and he would listen. Chapter 3. The Locked Room. The morning mist had barely lifted from the Norfolk marshes when Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned to the radio tower, its iron lattice stark against the grey sky. The air was damp, carrying the faint scent of mud and decay from the surrounding fens. Poirot, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the muddy path, ascended the spiral staircase with a purposeful stride, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. Hastings followed, his face clouded with unease, still troubled by the image of Samuel Trent's lifeless form slumped over the console. "Really, Poirot," Hastings said, his voice echoing in the hollow tower. "This place gives me the creeps. A man dead in a locked room, no way in or out. It's unnatural." Poirot paused on a step, his green eyes glinting with amusement. "In naturel, mon ami." "No, it is entirely natural when one understands the mind of the criminal. A locked room is but a trick, a sleight of hand to divert us from the truth. Hercule Poirot will not be so easily deceived." They reached the control room, its door still sealed with police tape. Inspector Japp, already inside, was overseeing a constable who guarded the scene. The room was as they had left it, the console with its maze of dials and switches, the teacup on its saucer, the notepad with its cryptic numbers, 3, 7, 12. Trent's body had been removed, but the chair where he had sat bore the imprint of his weight, a silent testament to his final moments. Poirot's gaze swept the room with methodical precision. "The door, Inspector," he said, approaching the heavy steel barrier. "You have confirmed it was locked when the body was discovered?" Japp nodded, producing the iron key from a sealed envelope. "Locked tight. This was in Trent's pocket, and the bolt was slid home. No sign of tampering, no other keys found." Poirot examined the lock, his fingers tracing its edges. The mechanism was sturdy, unyielding, designed to secure the room against intruders. He tested the bolt, finding it smooth but firm. "And the window?" he asked, turning to the single, small pane set high in the wall. "Sealed shut," Japp replied. "Painted over years ago, by the look of it. No one's getting through that without a crowbar." Hastings, peering at the window, frowned. Could someone have climbed the tower, got in from the outside, somehow? Poirot shook his head. "No, Hastings. The tower is exposed, its exterior a lattice of iron. A climber would be seen, and the window, as the inspector says, is immovable. The answer lies within this room." He turned his attention to the console, his eyes narrowing at the faint scorch mark near the transmitter. The wire he had noted before, slightly frayed, seemed to beckon him. He crouched, inspecting it closely, his gloved fingers hovering over its exposed strands. "This wire," he murmured. "It is not as it should be. A transmitter should not carry such a current as to burn a man's hand." He straightened, his mind racing. "Inspector, what has the coroner said of the cause of death?" Japp consulted his notebook. "Electrocution, confirmed this morning. High voltage, straight to the heart. The burn on Trent's hand matches the point of contact, likely the console itself. But here's the rub. The system's not meant to carry that kind of power. It's a radio, not a dynamo." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Précisément. The current was altered deliberately to become a weapon. This was no accident, but a murder most calculated." He moved to the teacup, lifting it carefully to the light. The faint residue within caught his attention, its odor subtle but distinct. "And this tea," he said, "it must be tested. There may be more to it than meets the eye." Hastings, watching Poirot's meticulous inspection, ventured a theory. Could it be sabotage? Someone tampering with the equipment, not meaning to kill Trent specifically? Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A possibility, Hastings, but unlikely. The locked door, the cryptic broadcast, these suggest intent, not chance. The killer wished Trent dead and took pains to make it appear impossible." He turned to the notepad, studying the numbers again. "These figures, 3, 7, 12, they may be a code, or they may be nothing. But they were important to Trent, or to his killer." Japp scratched his head. "You're thinking one of our suspects rigged the console. Dobbs, maybe. He's the technician, knows the wiring inside out." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone non-committal. "But knowledge is not guilt. Mademoiselle Voss understands signals, and Monsieur Klein has an interest in the tower's mechanics. We must consider all possibilities." He paced the small room, his steps measured, his mind reconstructing the scene. "Picture it, mes amis. Trent sits here at midnight, operating the transmitter. He touches the console, and a fatal shock courses through him. The door is locked, the key in his pocket. How, then, does the killer escape?" Hastings brightened. "A duplicate key. Someone locked the door after the fact." Poirot shook his head. "No, the lock is unique, and the key was with Trent. A duplicate would require time and access, and we have no evidence of such." He paused, his gaze returning to the wire. "The answer lies in the method of the shock. The console was altered, but how? And by whom?" He knelt again, examining the base of the console where the wires converged. A small panel, barely noticeable, caught his eye. He pried it open, revealing a tangle of cables, one of which seemed out of place, a thicker gauge spliced into the system with crude but effective precision. "Voilà," he said softly. "A modification, not part of the original design. This could carry a higher current, enough to kill." Japp whistled. "So the killer rewired the console? That's no small feat. Points to Dobbs, doesn't it?" Poirot rose, dusting his hands. "It points to someone with knowledge, Inspector. But we must not leap to conclusions. This wire, it was hidden, meant to escape notice. The killer is clever, but not infallible." He turned to the door once more, his mind tracing the sequence of events. Trent was alone, or so it seems. He drinks his tea, he sends his broadcast, he touches the console, and he dies. The door is locked, the room sealed, yet the killer was here, or had been here, to set the trap. Hastings, growing impatient, gestured to the room. "But how, Poirot? If the door was locked and the window sealed, how did they get in to rig the wire? Or out, for that matter?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. That, mon ami, is the heart of the puzzle. The locked room is not a barrier, but a stage, set to mislead us. The killer wishes us to marvel at the impossibility. But Hercule Poirot sees through such tricks. The solution is in the details. The wire, the T, the numbers, the broadcast. He turned to Japp. I require the wiring diagram for this console, and a list of all who serviced it in the past month. Monsieur Dobbs will have records, I presume. And the T, it must be analyzed at once. If there is a sedative, it changes the picture. Japp nodded, jotting notes. I'll get on it. Anything else? Oui, Poirot said. I wish to know more of Trent's habits. Who brought him his tea? Who visited him in the tower? His colleagues, his friends, his enemies? These we must uncover. He glanced at the console, its dials silent now, yet still, whispering secrets. This tower, it was his domain, but also his trap. We must learn why. As they descended the staircase, the wind rattled the tower's frame, a mournful sound that seemed to echo Trent's final moments. Hastings shivered. It's a devilish setup, Poirot. Whoever did this planned it to the last detail. Précisément, Poirot replied, his voice soft but resolute. But no plan is perfect. The little grey cells, they will find the flaw, the thread that unravels the whole. The tower may be silent, but it will speak to Hercule Poirot. Outside, the marshes stretched endlessly under the grey sky, their secrets buried in the mist. Poirot's mind, however, was already piecing together the fragments of the puzzle, each detail a step closer to the truth hidden within the locked room. Chapter 4. The cryptic broadcast, the Thornwick Inn, a low-beamed establishment with creaking floors and a perpetually smoky hearth, served as Hercule Poirot's temporary headquarters. The morning light filtered weakly through the leaded windows, casting a dim glow over the parlour where Poirot sat, a steaming tisane before him. His small hands, always so precise, arranged a stack of papers with meticulous care. The transcript of Samuel Trent's final broadcast, the coroner's preliminary report, and a list of the tower's recent maintenance logs. Captain Hastings, nursing a cup of strong tea, watched his friend with a mixture of admiration and impatience. It's that message, Poirot, Hastings said, tapping the transcript. Alpha 7, shadow falls, midnight calls. It's like something from a spy novel. What does it mean? Was Trent sending a warning, or was it just nonsense? Poirot's green eyes flicked up, sharp and thoughtful. Nonsense, mon ami. Non, nothing in a murder is nonsense. This message, it is the voice of the crime, and we must listen to what it tells us. He lifted the transcript, reading the words aloud in his soft, precise voice. Alpha 7, shadow falls. Midnight calls. It is deliberate, structured. A code, perhaps, or a signal to someone waiting in the night. Hastings leaned forward. A signal to whom? A spy, like Klein. Japp's convinced he's up to no good. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint sign of amusement. The good inspector. He sees spies in every shadow. But we must not assume. We must question, observe, and understand. This broadcast is the key. But to unlock it, we must know more of those who surrounded Monsieur Trent. The parlour door opened, admitting Inspector Japp. His face flushed from the morning chill. He carried a folder under his arm, its edges worn from hasty handling. Morning, Poirot, he said, settling into a chair. I've got the coroner's report. Full details now. Trent died of electrocution, no question. High voltage, likely from the console itself. The burn on his hand was the entry point. But here's the odd bit. The tea in that cup you water. Flagged. Traces of a sedative. Not enough to kill, but enough to make him drowsy. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A sedative. Voila. A piece of the puzzle falls into place. Trent was made pliable, less aware of the danger in the console. This was no impulsive act, Inspector. The killer planned with care. He set the transcript down, his mind racing. And the wiring diagram, the maintenance logs. Japp opened the folder, spreading papers across the table. Dobbs provided the diagram. Says it's accurate, though he's cagey about his own work. The logs show he serviced the console 3 days ago, replaced a fuse, tightened some connections. Nothing about that spliced wire you found. Poirot nodded, studying the diagram. Its lines and symbols, a map of electrical pathways, spoke to him as clearly as a street plan of London. This splice, he said, pointing to a crude sketch he had made of the modified wire. It is not in the original design. Someone with knowledge of the system added it, knowing it would deliver a fatal shock when Trent touched the console. Hastings frowned. But who? Dobbs is the obvious choice. He's the technician. Or Voss, maybe. She's a code breaker, but she must know something about the equipment, working there every day. Poirot raised a finger. Patience, Hastings. Knowledge is not guilt, but it is a clue. We must question our suspects again, and we must understand this broadcast. He turned to Japp. I wish to speak with Mademoiselle Voss first. Her expertise in codes makes her the most likely to shed light on the message. Japp arranged for Margaret Voss to be brought to the inn. She arrived promptly, her auburn hair still tightly bound, her expressions one of barely concealed irritation. She sat across from Poirot, her hands folded, her posture defiant. I've told you everything, she said, her voice sharp. I was at the pub. I didn't kill Trent. Why drag me here again? Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. Mademoiselle Voss, you are a woman of intellect, a breaker of codes. This message, Alpha, 7, Shadow Falls, Midnight Calls, it is within your expertise. Tell me, what does it mean? Margaret's eyes narrowed. It's not a standard code, if that's what you're asking. Could be a private cipher, something Trent cooked up himself, or it could be gibberish, meant to sound important. He wasn't exactly a genius, you know. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And yet, you worked with him closely. You knew his habits, his errors. Did he ever speak of codes, of messages sent in secret? She hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing her face. He was always scribbling numbers, those ones you found, probably. Never explained them. Said they were personal notes. I didn't care enough to ask. Poirot noted the hesitation, filing it away. And the console? You operate it daily. Could you, perhaps, alter its wiring to cause harm? Margaret's face flushed. That's absurd. I send signals, not rewire the blasted thing. Ask Dobbs. That's his job. She stood, her chair scraping the floor. I've answered your questions. Am I free to go? Poirot inclined his head. For now, mademoiselle. But the truth, it has a way of revealing itself. As Margaret left, Poirot turned to Japp. She knows more than she says, but her anger is genuine. Next, let us speak with Monsieur Klein. Victor Klein arrived with his usual polished calm, his tailored coat immaculate, his smile a touch too practiced. He took a seat, crossing his legs with an air of nonchalance. Monsieur Poirot, I am at your service, though I must say, this is becoming tiresome. I am a journalist, not a murderer. Poirot's eyes twinkled. A journalist with a keen interest in radio towers, oui? Tell me, Monsieur Klein, what did you learn from Monsieur Trant about his broadcasts? Did he ever mention this message? Alpha 7, shadow falls. Midnight calls. Klein's smile faltered, just for a moment. We spoke of technical matters, frequencies, signal ranges. He never mentioned any specific message. As for that broadcast, it sounds like nonsense to me. Perhaps he was drunk. Poirot's expression remained impassive. Drunk, you say? Yet the tea contained a sedative, not alcohol. And you, monsieur, were seen near the tower that afternoon. What was the true purpose of your visit? Klein shrugged, his composure returning. As I said, research. The tower's history fascinates me, its role in wartime communications. Trent was helpful, if a bit dull. I left by 6, as the log confirms. Poirot nodded, dismissing him with a wave. Merci, Monsieur Klein. We shall speak again. Finally, Ernest Dobbs was brought in, his nervous energy palpable. He clutched his cap, his eyes darting between Poirot and Japp. I've told you, sir. I wasn't there at midnight. I fixed the console days ago, that's all. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. And this splice, Monsieur Dobbs? The wire that caused the fatal shock. It is not in your diagram. Yet you are the technician, the one who knows the system best. How do you explain it? Dobbs's face paled. I don't know. Someone must have tampered with it after I left. I swear, I only replaced a fuse. The console was fine when I checked it. Poirot studied him, noting the sweat on his brow. And Trent's habits? Did he speak of codes, of messages sent late at night? Dobbs shook his head. He never said much to me, just complained when the equipment acted up. Those numbers on his pad? I never saw them before. Poirot dismissed him, turning to Hastings and Japp as the door closed. Each of them denies knowledge of the message, yet each could have sent it. A Mademoiselle Voss has the skill to craft a code, Monsieur Klein the motive to intercept one, and Monsieur Dobbs the means to tamper with the console. Hastings rubbed his chin. But why the message at all? If it's a code, who was it for? Poirot's eyes narrowed. That, mon ami, is the question. A signal requires a receiver. We must request a list of all broadcasts from the tower this month, and any reports of unusual activity in the area. If this was espionage, as the inspector suspects, there will be a trail. Japp nodded. I'll get on it. Anything else? Oui, Poirot said. The sedative in the tea. Who had access to it? And the numbers on the notepad. 3, 7, 12. They may be a key or a distraction. We must test every possibility. As Japp left to make arrangements, Poirot sat back, his fingers steepled. The cryptic broadcast echoed in his mind, a riddle wrapped in a murder. The tower, with its silent dials and hidden wires, held the truth, and Hercule Poirot was determined to make it speak. Chapter 5. The Spy's Shadow. The Norfolk marshes, shrouded in a late morning haze, seemed to hold their breath as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings walked the narrow path from the Thornwick Inn to the village square. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and distant salt, and the radio tower loomed in the distance, its red beacon a faint smudge against the grey sky. Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, walked with a briskness that belied the weight of the mystery. Hastings, trailing slightly, clutched his hat against a sudden gust, his face creased with the unease that had plagued him since their arrival. "It's Klein, isn't it, Poirot?" Hastings said, breaking the silence. "Japp's got his number. A journalist sniffing around military sites, vague accent, perfect papers. He's got to be a spy. And if Trent caught him, that's motive enough for murder. Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained grave. Mon ami, you leap to the dramatic conclusion, as always. Monsieur Klein may indeed be more than he seems, but a spy does not always a murderer make. We must seek the truth in the details, not in the suspicions of our good inspector. They reached the village square, where Japp awaited them outside the modest police station, a squat building of weathered brick. His face was grim, his hands thrust deep into his coat pockets. "Got something for you, Poirot," he said, gesturing them inside. "Intelligence from London. Klein's been on their radar for months. No hard proof, mind you, but he's been seen near sensitive sites, airfields, naval yards. His articles are thin, more cover than substance. They think he's feeding information to a foreign power." Poirot nodded, settling into a chair in Japp's cramped office, its walls lined with faded wanted posters and a map of the county. "Most interesting, Inspector. And what of Monsieur Trent? Was he known to the authorities?" Japp shook his head. "Clean as a whistle, far as we can tell. Just a radio operator. Been at the tower 5 years. No record, no enemies. Except maybe Voss, who thought he was a fool. But this broadcast business." He slid a folder across the desk. "I've got the logs you asked for. Trent sent a few unscheduled transmissions over the past month, all late at night, all in code, not part of the station's usual traffic." Poirot's fingers, precise as ever, opened the folder. The logs listed dates and times, each entry accompanied by strings of letters and numbers indecipherable to the untrained eye. "These codes," he murmured, "they are not unlike the one sent at midnight. Mademoiselle Voss must be questioned again. She may recognize their pattern." Hastings leaned over, peering at the papers. If Trent was sending secret messages, maybe he was in on it with Klein. Then they had a falling out, and Klein did him in. Poirot's moustache twitched. "A possibility, Hastings, but we must not assume. Let us speak with Monsieur Klein and test his story." He turned to Japp. "Arrange for him to meet us at the inn, s'il vous plaît. And I wish to see the tower's visitor log again. Who came and went in the days before the murder?" Japp nodded, scribbling a note. "I'll have Klein brought in. The log's at the station. I checked it myself. Klein signed in at 4 o'clock the afternoon before Trent died, stayed an hour. Voss was there for her shift, left at 7. Dobbs popped in that morning, said he was checking the aerial. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And no others. No strangers, no deliveries. "Not a soul," Japp said. "The tower's off the beaten track. Locals avoid it. Say it's haunted since the war." Hastings shivered. "Can't say I blame them. That place feels like it's watching you." Poirot dismissed the notion with a wave. "Superstition, mon ami, clouds the mind. The tower is but metal and wire, and it will yield its secrets to Hercule Poirot." At the inn, Victor Klein arrived promptly, his polished demeanor intact despite the early summons. He wore a grey suit, its cut just a shade too foreign for the Norfolk countryside, and his smile was as smooth as ever. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, taking a seat, "I trust this will be brief. I have deadlines to meet." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Your deadlines, Monsieur Klein, they interest me less than your movements. You visited Monsieur Trent the afternoon before his death. You spoke of the tower's history, oui? Yet I find your interest in wartime signals most particular. Tell me, what did you truly seek from him?" Klein's smile held, but his eyes flickered. "As I told you, I'm researching a story. The tower was a relay point during the war, passing coded messages to the resistance. Trent knew its history, though he wasn't exactly forthcoming. We discussed signal ranges, nothing more." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. "And these coded messages in the logs, messages sent by Trent in recent weeks, were you aware of them? Did you, perhaps, intercept them?" Klein's composure wavered, his fingers tightening on the armrest. "Intercept? You think me a spy, Monsieur Poirot? I'm a journalist, not a code-breaker. If Trent was sending messages, I knew nothing of them." Poirot studied him, noting the slight sheen of sweat on his brow. "Yet you were seen near military sites, Monsieur Klein. Your papers are impeccable, your articles vague. A man of your talents could do much with a radio tower, no?" Klein stood, his voice sharp. "I've had enough of these accusations. I came to Thornwick for a story, not to kill a man. Check the logs, ask the landlady. I was in my room all night." Poirot inclined his head. "We shall, monsieur. But the truth, it has a way of revealing itself, even to those who hide behind perfect alibis." As Klein left, Hastings turned to Poirot. "He's lying, isn't he? That business about the tower's history. It's too convenient." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his fingers steepled, "but a lie is only useful if we understand its purpose. Klein may be a spy, as the inspector believes, but his role in Trent's death is not yet clear. We must return to the tower." The trio made their way back to the tower, the wind sharper now, carrying a chill that seeped through their coats. Inside the control room, Poirot moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the console where Trent had died. The frayed wire, the scorched panel, the notepad, all were as they had left them. He picked up the visitor log, flipping through its pages. Klein's signature was there, as Japp had said, but Poirot's gaze lingered on an earlier entry. A delivery of maintenance supplies, signed for by Dobbs 2 days before the murder. "Supplies," Poirot murmured. "What was delivered, I wonder? And by whom?" Japp frowned. "Just routine stuff. Fuses, cables, the like. Dobbs said it was standard stock." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Standard, perhaps, but we must confirm. A cable, if tampered with, could be the source of our deadly splice." He turned to the notepad. Its numbers, 3, 7, 12, still a mystery. "And these figures, they may be a frequency, a time, or something else entirely. We must ask Mademoiselle Voss again. She cannot evade forever." Back at the inn, Poirot requested Margaret Voss's presence once more. She arrived, her expression a mix of exasperation and wariness. "What now, Monsieur Poirot?" she said, crossing her arms. "I've told you all I know about Trent and his blasted messages." Poirot's smile was disarming. "Not quite, mademoiselle. These logs show coded transmissions sent by Monsieur Trent, similar to the one at midnight. As a code breaker, you must have noticed them. Why did you not mention this?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "I noticed, yes. But they weren't my business. Trent sent them on his own time, late at night. I assumed they were personal. Hobbyist nonsense, maybe. I didn't pry." Poirot's gaze held hers. "And the numbers on his notepad, 3, 7, 12. Do they mean anything to you?" She shook her head too quickly. "Nothing, just his scribbles. He was always jotting down numbers." Poirot nodded, dismissing her, but noting her haste. "She knows something, Hastings," he said as she left. "Her denial is too firm, her eyes too guarded." Japp, rejoining them, looked skeptical. "You think Voss is in on it, or is it still Klein?" Poirot's expression was inscrutable. The shadow of a spy falls over this case, but shadows are deceptive. We need more: the delivery records, the nature of these supplies, and a deeper look into Trent's life. Who was he to Klein? To Voss? To Dobbs? The answer lies in their connections. As the afternoon faded into dusk, Poirot sat by the inn's fire, the broadcast logs spread before him. The cryptic message echoed in his mind, a signal sent into the night. Was it a call to a hidden ally, or a deliberate misdirection? The tower held the truth, and Hercule Poirot would find it, step by meticulous step. Chapter 6. The technician's secret, the Thornwick Inn's parlour, with its low ceiling and flickering fire, had become a sanctuary for Hercule Poirot's meticulous deliberations. The afternoon light, weak and watery, filtered through the mullioned windows, casting long shadows across the worn oak table where Poirot sat, surrounded by papers, the tower's maintenance logs, the wiring diagram, and the cryptic transcript of Samuel Trent's final broadcast. Captain Hastings, restless as ever, paced near the hearth, his brow furrowed with the weight of the unsolved puzzle. "Poirot," Hastings said, pausing to warm his hands. "This case is like trying to catch fog. The locked room, the tampered wire, that blasted message, Alpha, 7, shadow falls, midnight calls. We've got suspects, but no clear path. Klein's shifty, Voss is cagey, and Dobbs, well, he's a bundle of nerves. What's next?" Poirot, adjusting his tie with a precise flick, looked up from the logs. His green eyes gleamed with the quiet intensity of a man whose mind was a step ahead of his companions. "Next, mon ami, we uncover the secrets hidden in plain sight. Each suspect has given us pieces of the truth, but it is Monsieur Dobbs, the technician, who draws my attention now. His hands, they tremble. His words, they falter. He knows more than he says." Inspector Japp, entering with a gust of cold air, overheard the remark. "Dobbs, eh? I've been thinking the same. He's got access to every wire in that tower, and those tools of his were right there, at the scene. Nervous as a cat, too." He pulled a chair up to the table, producing a small notebook. "I checked the delivery records you asked for. 2 days before Trent's death, Dobbs signed for a crate of supplies. Cables, fuses, connectors. Nothing unusual according to the supplier, but I've sent for the full inventory." Poirot nodded, his fingers tapping the wiring diagram. "Bon. The splice that killed Monsieur Trent was not part of the tower's original system. It was added deliberately to deliver a fatal shock. Monsieur Dobbs, as the technician, is the most likely to have the skill for such a task. We must question him again. With care." Hastings frowned. "But why would Dobbs kill Trent? They worked together, didn't they? No bad blood that we've heard of." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Motives, Hastings, are like shadows. They shift and hide until the light is cast upon them. We must learn what Monsieur Dobbs conceals." He rose, his movements brisk. "Inspector, arrange for Monsieur Dobbs to meet us here, and I wish to see the maintenance log in detail. Every repair, every visit he made to the tower." Japp departed to summon Dobbs, and Poirot turned to the logs, his eyes scanning the entries with surgical precision. "See here," he said, pointing to a line. 3 days before the murder, Dobbs recorded a repair to the transmitter, a loose connection, he claims. Yet he did not mention this when we first spoke. Why? Hastings peered over his shoulder. Sloppy record-keeping, or maybe he's covering something up. Précisément, Poirot said. A man who forgets to mention a repair may forget to mention other things, or he may wish us to believe it was forgotten. Ernest Dobbs arrived at the inn within the hour, his wiry frame hunched as if bracing against an unseen storm. His cap was clutched in his hands, its brim worn from nervous twisting, and his eyes darted between Poirot, Hastings, and Japp, who stood by the door like a sentinel. The parlour felt smaller with his presence, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Monsieur Dobbs," Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding, "you have told us you were home the night of Monsieur Tront's death, asleep. Yet your tools were found in the tower, and your log shows a repair to the transmitter 3 days prior, a repair you did not mention. Why is this?" Dobbs's face flushed, his fingers tightening on the cap. I forgot, sir. It was just a routine job. The transmitter was acting up, cutting out mid-signal. I tightened a connection, replaced a fuse. Nothing out of the ordinary." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "And this splice, this extra wire that delivered the fatal shock, can you explain it? It is not in the diagram you provided." Dobbs's eyes widened, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. "Splice? I don't know about any splice. I swear, I left the console in good order. Someone must have tampered with it after me." Poirot leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Someone, Monsieur Dobbs, or you perhaps, knowing the system as you do. A technician could alter a wire, increase the voltage, and leave no trace of his presence, especially if he was the last to service the equipment." Dobbs's hands shook, his voice rising. "I didn't do it. I liked Trent well enough. He wasn't perfect, always leaving the equipment on, draining the batteries. But I had no reason to kill him." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet you were in the tower that evening, were you not, before Monsieur Tront's shift began?" Dobbs froze, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I was there, yes, but not late. I stopped by around 5 to check the aerial. The wind had been rattling it, and I didn't want it coming loose. I was gone by 6, I swear." Japp stepped forward, his tone gruff. "Your wife couldn't confirm you were home, Dobbs. Said she was asleep. That's a shaky alibi for a man whose tools were at a murder scene." Dobbs's face crumpled. "I know it looks bad, but I didn't do it. I left my tools because I was in a rush. My boy was sick, needed me home. Ask anyone at the station. I signed out at 6. Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. "And these supplies, delivered 2 days before the murder. Cables, fuses, connectors. Did you inspect them? Could one of those cables have been the deadly splice?" Dobbs shook his head, his voice hoarse. "I didn't open the crate, just signed for it and left it in the storeroom. I meant to check it later, but I got busy." Poirot exchanged a glance with Japp. "Most interesting," he said. "A crate unopened, yet a new cable appears in the console. We must see this storeroom, Inspector, and examine its contents." He turned back to Dobbs. "One final question, monsieur. The numbers on Monsieur Trent's notepad. 3, 7, 12. Do they mean anything to you?" Dobbs blinked, his confusion genuine. "Numbers? No, sir. I never saw him write anything like that. He was always scribbling, but I didn't pay it mind." Poirot dismissed him with a nod, his mind already turning over the new information. As Dobbs shuffled out, Hastings let out a low whistle. "He's hiding something, Poirot. That business about the crate. Too convenient, don't you think?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his fingers steepled. "But his fear is real. and fear can come from guilt or from ignorance. We must verify his story. The aerial repair, the unopened crate, the sick child. He turned to Jap. I require the delivery manifest, and I wish to see the storeroom myself. If the splice came from that crate, it was placed there with purpose. Jap nodded, making a note. I'll get the manifest and arrange a visit to the station. Anything else? Oui, Poirot said. The sedative in the tea. Who had access to it? We must also speak with the station staff. Did anyone bring Trent his tea that night? A small detail, but it may be the thread that unravels the tapestry. As Jap left to make arrangements, Poirot sat back, his gaze distant. The maintenance log lay open before him. Dobbs's shaky signature, a stark contrast to the neat entries of earlier days. The technician's secret, whether of guilt or oversight, was a piece of the puzzle, but the cryptic broadcast, Alpha 7 Shadow Falls, midnight calls, still lingered in Poirot's mind. Was it Trent's message or the killer's? And who was meant to hear it? Hastings, watching his friend, ventured a thought. If Dobbs rigged the console, why the sedative? Seems like overkill. Poirot's smile was faint. Overkill, mon ami. No, it is precision. The sedative ensured Trent was drowsy, less likely to notice the tampered wire. The killer is clever, calculating. But Hercule Poirot is more so. He rose, his movements brisk. Come, Hastings, the tower awaits, and its secrets will not hide forever. Outside, the marshes stretched silent and grey, the tower a dark sentinel in the distance. Poirot's little grey cells were at work, piecing together the fragments of a crime that grew more intricate with every step. Chapter 7. Margaret's Alibi. The Thornwick Inn's parlour, with its crackling fire and the faint aroma of polished wood, had become a familiar refuge for Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of the truth. The late afternoon light, tinged with the sombre hues of a Norfolk winter, slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the table where Poirot sat, his small hands arranging the ever-growing collection of evidence. The broadcast transcript, the wiring diagram, the maintenance logs, and now a chemist's report confirming the sedative in Samuel Trent's tea. Captain Hastings, seated opposite, fidgeted with his pipe, his patience wearing thin as the mystery deepened. Poirot, Hastings said, puffing out a cloud of smoke. We're swimming in clues, but they don't add up. Dobbs's story about the crate is flimsy, Klein's too smooth, and that message, Alpha 7, Shadow Falls. Midnight calls, it's like a riddle from a madman. What about Voss? She's got the brains to pull this off, and she didn't like Trent one bit. Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with the hint of a smile. Mon ami, you are correct that Mademoiselle Voss is a woman of intellect, and her dislike of Monsieur Trent is evident. But dislike is not murder. We must test her alibi, for it is in the cracks of such stories that the truth often hides. He turned to the chemist's report, his finger tracing the line about the sedative, a mild barbiturate, commonly used for sleeplessness. This drug, it was no accident. Someone ensured Trent was dulled, less alert to the danger in the console. We must learn who had access to such a substance. Inspector Japp entered, his coat dusted with frost from the chill outside. He carried a thin folder, his expression a mix of determination and frustration. "Got something for you, Poirot," he said, tossing the folder onto the table. The delivery manifest from the station. Lists, cables, fuses, and connectors, just as Dobbs said. But here's the kicker. The crate was delivered by a local supplier, and the driver swears he left it unopened. If that splice came from there, someone at the station tampered with it." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the information. "And the storeroom? Have you examined it?" Japp shrugged. "Not yet. It's locked, and Dobbs has the key. I've sent for him to open it, but he's dragging his feet. Says he's busy with repairs at another site." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Busy or evasive? We shall see. But first, I wish to revisit Mademoiselle Voss's alibi. The landlord at the Hare and Hound confirmed she was there, but his barmaid mentioned a curious detail, an absence of nearly an hour. We must clarify this." Hastings brightened. "That's right. If she slipped out, she could have reached the tower, done the deed, and got back without raising suspicion." Poirot raised a finger. "Patience, Hastings. An opportunity is not a confession. Let us speak with the barmaid and confirm the timeline." He turned to Japp. "Arrange for her to meet us here, s'il vous plaît. And I wish to see Mademoiselle Voss again afterward." Japp nodded, heading out to make the arrangements. Poirot returned to the papers, his gaze lingering on the broadcast transcript. "This message," he murmured. "It is the heart of the mystery. Was it Trent's or the killer's? And why send it at all?" The barmaid, a young woman named Elsie Carter, arrived within the hour, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She was a sturdy girl with two bright eyes and a nervous habit of twisting her apron. Poirot greeted her with his most charming smile, setting her at ease as he gestured to a chair. "Mademoiselle Carter, you are most kind to assist Hercule Poirot. You were working at the Hare and Hound the night Monsieur Trent died, oui?" Elsie nodded, her hands smoothing her apron. "Yes, sir. Busy night, it was. Miss Voss was there, like she often is, sitting in the corner with a book and a pint." Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle. "And you told the inspector that she stepped outside for a time. Can you recall when and for how long?" Elsie frowned, thinking. "It was around 9:30, I'd say. She said she needed some air. Looked a bit cross, like something was bothering her. She was gone a good while, maybe 40 minutes, maybe more. Came back just before 10, picked up her book again, like nothing happened." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. 40 minutes, he said under his breath. "The tower's a 10-minute walk each way. That's enough time to get there, tamper with the console, and return." Poirot's expression remained impassive. "Merci, Mademoiselle Carter. You have been most helpful. One final question. Did Mademoiselle Voss often leave the pub during her visits?" Elsie shook her head. "Not usually. She's a regular, likes her quiet corner. That night was different, though. She seemed edgy." Poirot dismissed her with a nod, his mind already turning over the new information. As Elsie left, Japp returned, followed by Margaret Voss, whose sharp features were set in a scowl. She stood rather than sat, her arms crossed, her dark eyes flashing with defiance. "This is getting ridiculous, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice clipped. "I've told you everything. I was at the pub. I didn't kill Trent." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. "Mademoiselle Voss, let us speak plainly. You were at the Hare and Hound, oui, but you left for nearly an hour, between 9:30 and 10. The tower is a short walk. You had time to reach it, to alter the console, to administer a sedative. Why did you leave the pub?" Margaret's face tightened, her hands clenching. "I needed air, that's all. It was stuffy, and I was tired of the noise. I walked down the lane, cleared my head and came back. Is that a crime?" Poirot's gaze held hers. "It is not a crime, mademoiselle, but it is an opportunity. You disliked Monsieur Trent. You called him a fool, careless with the equipment. Did this dislike drive you to more than words?" Margaret's eyes blazed. "I won't deny I couldn't stand him. He took credit for my work, mucked up the signals, made my life harder. But murder? I'd have smashed his precious console before I'd touch him." She paused, her voice softening slightly. "Besides, I don't know a thing about wiring. That's Dobbs's domain." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And the sedative in Monsieur Trent's tea. The station keeps such drugs for late shifts, does it not? You, as a senior operator, have access to the supplies." Margaret's lips parted, then closed. Yes, there's a medicine cabinet, for headaches and the like, but I didn't touch it that day. Anyone could have got to it. Dobbs, the cleaners, even Klein, for all I know." Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Most interesting. And the numbers on Monsieur Trent's notepad. 3, 7, 12. You say they are nothing to you, yet you are a code breaker. Could they be part of a cipher?" Margaret's jaw tightened again. "I told you, they're just his scribbles. If they're a code, it's not one I know." Poirot dismissed her with a nod, but his eyes followed her as she left, her stride brisk but unsteady. Hastings turned to him, his voice low. "She's lying, Poirot. That absence from the pub, it's too perfect. And she's got access to the sedatives." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone thoughtful. "But her anger is genuine, and her ignorance of the wiring may be true. We must verify her access to the medicine cabinet and check the storeroom for that crate." He turned to Japp. "Have you the key to the storeroom yet?" Japp nodded. "Dobbs is bringing it this evening. I've also got the station manager checking who handled the tea supplies. Should have answers by tomorrow." "Bon," Poirot said. "And the broadcast logs. Any progress on their codes?" Japp shook his head. "Still waiting on the code breakers in London. They say it's not a standard cipher, but they're working on it." Poirot rose, his movements brisk. "Then we must work faster. The alibi of Mademoiselle Voss is fragile, but it is not yet broken. The storeroom may hold the key to the splice, and the tea may point to the hand that drugged it. We are close, mes amis, to the truth." As dusk settled over Thornwick, Poirot stood by the window, gazing at the distant tower. Its beacon pulsed faintly, a silent reminder of the crime. Margaret's alibi, like the locked room, was a carefully constructed facade. But Hercule Poirot knew that even the strongest facades had cracks, and he would find them. Chapter 8. The Mechanics of Murder. The Norfolk evening settled over Thornwick like a heavy cloak, the marshes cloaked in mist, and the air sharp with the promise of frost. Inside the Thornwick Inn's parlour, Hercule Poirot sat at the oak table, his small frame radiating a quiet intensity. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the papers spread before him. The wiring diagram, the maintenance logs, the chemist's report, and the cryptic transcript of Samuel Trent's final broadcast. Alpha 7, Shadow Falls. Midnight calls. Captain Hastings, nursing a glass of whiskey, leaned against the mantel, his frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. "Poirot," Hastings said, swirling his drink. "We've got a sedative in the tea, a tampered wire in the console, and a locked room that's still locked tighter than a drum. Voss was out of the pub long enough to do it. Klein's got spy written all over him, and Dobbs can't keep his story straight. But how do we pin it down? It's like chasing a ghost." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with a faint smile. A ghost, mon ami? No, this is no spectre, but a human hand, clever and precise. The mechanics of this murder are clear to Hercule Poirot, if not yet complete. The killer has woven a tapestry of deception, but the threads, they are beginning to fray. He tapped the wiring diagram, his finger resting on the sketch of the deadly splice. This wire, it is the heart of the crime. Let us reconstruct the scene, step by step. Inspector Japp entered, his coat damp from the evening mist, carrying a small box of documents. "Evening, Poirot," he said, setting the box down. "Got the storeroom inventory and the medicine cabinet records." Dobbs finally opened the storeroom, grumbling all the way. The crate's there, half unpacked, with cables matching the type you found in the console. No way to tell if one's missing without a full count, though. Poirot's eyes brightened. "Bon. And the medicine cabinet." Japp flipped open his notebook. "Station keeps barbiturates for the night shift. Helps with fatigue, they say. Voss, as senior operator, has a key, but so does the station manager, and Dobbs has access for maintenance. No log of who took what, though. A sloppy setup." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the details. Sloppy, perhaps, but convenient for a killer. The sedative ensured Monsieur Trent was drowsy, less likely to notice the tampered wire. The splice delivered the fatal shock, and the locked room, that is the stroke of genius, meant to baffle us. He rose, pacing the small room with measured steps. "Let us imagine, mes amis. Trent sits at the console. Midnight approaches. He drinks his tea, laced with a sedative. He sends his cryptic message, touches the console, and the shock kills him instantly. The door is locked, the key in his pocket. How, then, does the killer escape?" Hastings frowned, setting down his glass. "That's the rub, Poirot. The door was bolted, the window sealed. Unless they had a key we don't know about, it's impossible." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Impossible?" "Non, Hastings. Nothing is impossible to the criminal mind, or to Hercule Poirot. The locked room is a stage, set to mislead. The killer did not need to escape, for they were not in the room when Trent died." He returned to the wiring diagram, his finger tracing the spliced cable. This modification, it could be set in advance, activated when Trent used the console. The killer needed only access to the tower beforehand. Japp's eyes widened. "You're saying it was a trap, rigged earlier? That fits Dobbs. He was in the tower that morning, checking the aerial." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone cautious. "But Mademoiselle Voss was there for her shift, and Monsieur Klein visited that afternoon. Any of them could have tampered with the console, given the opportunity." He turned to the storeroom inventory, scanning the list of cables and connectors. "These supplies, when were they delivered?" Japp consulted the manifest. 2 days before the murder, signed for by Dobbs. The driver swears the crate was sealed when he left it." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Sealed, yet a cable appears in the console. Not part of the original system. Someone opened that crate and used its contents to kill. We must examine it ourselves." The trio made their way to the radio station, a low brick building adjacent to the tower. The storeroom, tucked at the back, was a cluttered space smelling of oil and metal. The crate, wooden and battered, sat in a corner, its lid pried open. Inside, cables were neatly coiled, but one bundle seemed disturbed, its wrapping loose. Poirot knelt, inspecting the cables with a gloved hand. "These match the type of the splice," he said, holding up a thick, insulated wire. but we need a count to confirm if one is missing. Japp called for the station manager, a dour man named Hargreaves, who arrived with a ledger. "Should be 20 cables in that lot," he said, peering into the crate. "Looks like 19 now, but I can't swear to it. Things get moved around." Poirot's eyes gleamed. 19. One cable, perhaps, became the instrument of death. He turned to Japp. "We must test this cable against the splice. A match will confirm it came from this crate." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, ventured a theory. If the killer used a cable from the crate, they had to get into the storeroom. Dobbs has the key, but Voss and the manager do too. Klein could have sneaked in, maybe, during his visit. Poirot nodded. "Précisément. Access is the key, but so is timing. The sedative, the splice, the broadcast, all were planned with care. The killer knew Trent's habits, his shift, his tea drinking." He paused, his mind reconstructing the crime. "Picture it. The killer enters the tower before Trent's shift. They add the splice, perhaps during a quiet moment when the station is empty. They lace the tea with a sedative, perhaps in the kettle, to avoid suspicion. Then they leave, locking the door behind them. Trent arrives, drinks the tea, sends his message, and dies. The room locks itself when he bolts the door." Japp rubbed his chin. "That's devilishly clever. No need to be there when it happens. But who? Voss had the time, Dobbs had the skill, and Klein had the motive, if he's a spy." Poirot's expression was inscrutable. "Each has a piece of the puzzle, but the picture is not yet complete. We must confirm the cable's origin and trace the sedative's source, and the numbers, 3, 7, 12, on Trent's notepad. They linger in my mind. Are they a code, a frequency, or a distraction?" Back at the inn, Poirot requested a test of the cable against the splice, and Japp sent for a technician from London to analyze it. The medicine cabinet records, frustratingly vague, showed no recent withdrawals, but the barbiturates were accessible to anyone with a key. Poirot sat by the fire, his fingers steepled, his thoughts turning over the mechanics of the crime. "The killer is clever," he said to Hastings, "but not infallible. The locked room, the splice, the sedative, they are a machine, built to kill. But every machine has a flaw." Hastings sipped his whiskey, his voice low. "You're close, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes." Poirot's smile was faint. "Close, mon ami, but not there. The truth is like a signal, faint, but growing stronger. We must listen carefully, for the tower still has secrets to reveal." As night fell, the wind howled outside, rattling the inn's windows. The tower stood silent in the distance, its beacon pulsing like a heartbeat. Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, piecing together the mechanics of a murder that was as precise as it was deadly. Chapter 9. The Midnight Motive. The Thornwick Inn's parlour, bathed in the dim glow of a single lamp, seemed to close in around Hercule Poirot as he sat at the oak table, his eyes fixed on the papers before him. The fire had dwindled to embers, casting flickering shadows across the wiring diagram, the broadcast logs, and the chemist's report confirming the sedative in Samuel Trent's tea. The cryptic message, Alpha, 7, shadow falls. Midnight calls lay at the centre of his thoughts, a riddle that pulsed like the tower's beacon in the Norfolk night. Captain Hastings, slumped in an armchair, stifled a yawn, his patience stretched thin by the labyrinthine case. "Poirot," Hastings said, rubbing his eyes. "We've got the splice, the sedative, and a locked room, but we're no closer to pinning it on anyone. Voss had the time, Dobbs had the skill, and Klein's got that spy business hanging over him. But why? What drove one of them to kill Trent? Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with a faint smile. The motive, mon ami, is the melody of the crime, and we are beginning to hear its notes. The killer's hand was guided by something personal, something urgent. We must listen to the silences between their words. He tapped the broadcast logs, his finger resting on a series of late-night transmissions. These messages, sent by Monsieur Trent in the weeks before his death, are not innocent. They suggest a secret, perhaps one worth killing for. Inspector Japp entered, his face etched with fatigue, a thick folder under his arm. "Evening, Poirot," he said, dropping into a chair. "Got the full broadcast logs from the station, plus a report from London on those codes. They're not standard ciphers, but they're working on it. One thing's clear. Trent was sending unscheduled signals, always after midnight, to an unknown receiver. Sounds like espionage to me." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Espionage, Inspector? Perhaps, but we must not leap to conclusions. These messages may have been Trent's own, or they may have been sent by another, using his name. Let us examine the logs closely." He opened the folder, scanning the entries. Each transmission was brief, a string of letters and numbers, sent to a frequency not listed in the station's official records. "Most curious," he murmured. "These are deliberate, planned." Monsieur Trent was no mere operator. He was involved in something clandestine. Hastings leaned forward, his interest piqued. "You think Trent was a spy himself? Maybe Klein was his contact, and they had a falling out." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A possibility, Hastings. But we must consider all angles. Mademoiselle Voss, with her code-breaking skills, could have crafted these messages. Monsieur Dobbs, with his access to the equipment, could have ensured they were sent. And Monsieur Klein, with his suspicious movements, may have been the intended recipient, or the one who discovered Trent's secret." He turned to Japp. "Have you the results of the cable test? Does the splice match the storeroom supply?" Japp nodded, pulling a sheet from the folder. "The technician from London confirms it. The splice is identical to the cables in the crate. One's definitely missing, 19 left out of 20. Someone took it and wired it into the console." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Bon." The circle tightens. The killer used a cable from the storeroom, accessed the medicine cabinet for the sedative, and knew Trent's habits well enough to time the crime. This points to someone within the station. He paused, his mind racing. But the motive? Why kill Trent? Was it to silence him? To protect a secret? Or to settle a personal score? Japp rubbed his chin. "I'm still betting on Klein. Intelligence says he's been sniffing around military sites for months. If Trent was sending secrets, Klein might have killed him to cover his tracks." Poirot raised a finger. "Or to eliminate a rival. But let us test this theory. Arrange for Monsieur Klein to join us here, Inspector. We must probe his knowledge of these transmissions." Victor Klein arrived at the inn with his usual polished calm, his grey suit immaculate despite the late hour. He took a seat, crossing his legs with an air of nonchalance, but Poirot noted the faint tension in his jaw. "Monsieur Poirot," Klein said, his accent smooth but guarded, "I hope this is the last of these summons." "My work is suffering." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Your work, Monsieur Klein, interests me greatly. These broadcast logs show coded messages sent by Monsieur Trent late at night to an unknown receiver. As a journalist with a particular interest in signals. Did you know of these?" Klein's smile faltered, his fingers tightening on the armrest. "Messages?" "I told you, I spoke to Trent about the tower's history, not his broadcasts. If he was sending codes, I had no part in it." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. "Yet you were seen near military sites, monsieur. Your articles lack substance, your papers are too perfect. Were you intercepting Trent's signals, perhaps, or were you his partner? Until something went wrong." Klein's face paled, but he held his ground. "You're fishing, Monsieur Poirot. I'm no spy. I was in my lodgings that night, writing. Check with Mrs. Grover. She heard my typewriter." Poirot nodded, dismissing him with a wave. "We shall, monsieur. But the truth, it has a way of rising to the surface." As Klein left, Hastings turned to Poirot. "He's slippery as an eel, but he's rattled. You think he's our man?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone thoughtful. "But his denial is too practiced, his alibi too neat. We must also consider Mademoiselle Voss and Monsieur Dobbs. Their motives may be less obvious, but no less potent." He turned to Japp. "I wish to see the station manager again. Who prepared Trent's tea that night, and the medicine cabinet? Have we a list of who accessed it in the days before?" Japp made a note. "I'll get Hargreaves in tomorrow. As for the cabinet, it's a mess. No proper log. Anyone with a key could have taken the sedative." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Then we must narrow the field. The killer is one who knew Trent's routine, had access to the storeroom and cabinet, and understood the tower's workings. This points to the station. But we need more. The motive." Back at the table, Poirot returned to the broadcast logs, his fingers tracing the coded entries. "These messages," he said, "they were sent to someone. If we find the receiver, we find the motive." He paused, his mind turning over the numbers on Trent's notepad. 3, 7, 12. "These figures, they haunt me. Are they a frequency, a time, or a personal mark? We must ask Mademoiselle Voss again. She cannot hide forever." Hastings sighed, setting down his glass. "It's a tangle, Poirot. Espionage, jealousy, or something else entirely. What's driving this?" Poirot's smile was faint. "The human heart, mon ami, is a complex machine. It seeks revenge, protection, or power. The midnight motive is there, in the shadows of these logs, waiting for Hercule Poirot to illuminate it." He rose, his gaze fixed on the distant tower, its beacon a faint pulse in the night. The truth was close, but it remained just out of reach, hidden in the intricate dance of motive and opportunity. Chapter 10. The Trap. The Norfolk dawn broke with a reluctant grey light, the marshes veiled in a mist that clung to the earth like a shroud. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood outside the Thornwick Inn, his breath visible in the chill air. The radio tower loomed in the distance, its iron lattice a stark silhouette against the sombre sky, its red beacon pulsing faintly, as if guarding its secrets. Captain Hastings, bundled in his overcoat, joined him, his face etched with the weariness of a case that seemed to twist further with each revelation. "Poirot," Hastings said, stamping his feet against the cold. "We're close. I can feel it. The sedative, the spliced cable, those coded messages. Someone's got to crack soon. But how do we catch them? Voss, Klein, Dobbs, they're all slippery as eels." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with a quiet determination. "Mon ami, the eel may slip through the fingers, but not through the net of Hercule Poirot. The killer believes their crime is perfect, The locked room, the tampered wire, the cryptic broadcast, all designed to baffle. But every criminal leaves a trace, and we shall use their own cleverness against them." He turned to Inspector Japp, who approached with a brisk stride, his coat collar turned up against the wind. "Morning, Poirot," Japp said, his voice gruff. "I've got the latest from London. The code breakers are stumped. Those transmissions don't match any known cipher, but they're sure Trent was signaling someone local within a few miles. No leads on the receiver, though, and the cable from the storeroom definitely matches the splice, cut with a tool like Dobbs's." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the details. "Most excellent, Inspector. The net tightens. The killer is among our 3 suspects, and their motive lies in those signals, or in what they feared those signals revealed. We must provoke a reaction, force them to betray themselves." Hastings frowned, puzzled. "Provoke them? How? They've all got alibis, shaky or not, and they're sticking to their stories." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A trap, Hastings, is not set with force, but with subtlety. The killer is confident, but confidence breeds carelessness. We shall announce a breakthrough, a false one, and watch how they respond." He turned to Japp. "Inspector, I propose a ruse. Let it be known that we have decoded Monsieur Trent's final message and that it points to the killer's identity. Spread the word discreetly, through the station manager, perhaps, or the pub. The killer will hear, and they will act." Japp's eyes widened. "A bluff? Risky, Poirot, but it might shake something loose. What's the message supposed to say?" Poirot's fingers steepled, his voice low. "We say it names a witness, someone who saw the killer in the tower before the murder. The killer will fear exposure and move to cover their tracks. We must watch the tower tonight, for they may return to the scene." Hastings brightened, catching the spark of the plan. "Brilliant! If they try to tamper with the console again, or destroy evidence, we'll catch them red-handed." "Précisément," Poirot said. "But we must be vigilant. The killer is cunning, and they will not act blindly." He turned to Japp. "Arrange for the station manager to spread the rumor at the Hare and Hound this afternoon. Say the police are closing in, thanks to the decoded message. And station your men near the tower, hidden in the marshes. Hercule Poirot will be there, to observe." Japp nodded, scribbling in his notebook. "I'll get it done. Anything else?" "Oui," Poirot said. "The medicine cabinet. Have you confirmed who accessed it last? And the kettle? Any fingerprints?" Japp shook his head. "No prints on the kettle. Wiped clean. The cabinet's a dead end. Too many people in and out. But I've got a man checking the station staff's movements that day. Should have something by evening." "Bon," Poirot said. "Every detail matters. The numbers on Trent's notepad, 3, 7, 12, still elude us. They may be the key to the motive, or a distraction. We must keep them in mind." The day passed in a flurry of preparation. Japp instructed Hargreaves, the station manager, to let slip at the pub that the police had cracked the midnight message, hinting at a witness who could name the killer. The rumour spread like wildfire through Thornwick's small community, reaching the ears of Margaret Voss, Victor Klein, and Ernest Dobbs by dusk. Poirot, Hastings, and Japp took up positions in the marshes, concealed among the reeds, their eyes fixed on the Ypres tower's dark silhouette. The night was cold, the wind carrying a mournful whine as it swept across the fens. Poirot, his scarf wrapped tightly, crouched beside Hastings, his gaze unwavering. "Patience, mon ami," he whispered. The killer will come, driven by fear or desperation. We need only wait. Hours passed, the tower's beacon pulsing steadily. Just past 10, a shadow moved near the base of the structure, a figure cloaked in darkness. Hastings tensed, his hand gripping Poirot's arm. "There!" he hissed. "Someone's there!" Poirot's eyes narrowed, tracking the figure as it approached the tower's door, fumbling with the lock. Japp's men, hidden nearby, sprang into action, their lanterns cutting through the gloom. The figure froze, then bolted, but the constables were swift, tackling the intruder to the ground. As they dragged the figure into the light, Poirot saw the familiar face of Victor Klein, his polished demeanor replaced by panic. "Get off me!" Klein shouted, struggling against the constables. A small device, a portable receiver, its dials glinting, fell from his pocket, clattering onto the marshy ground. Japp scooped it up, his face grim. Well, what's this? A spy's toy, eh?" He turned to Poirot. "Looks like we've got our man." Klein, his hands cuffed, glared at them. "I'm no murderer. Yes, I'm intercepting signals. For a contact, not for murder. Trent was my source, feeding me coded messages about military movements. I needed him alive." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And yet, Monsieur Klein, you are here, tampering with the tower after hours. Why?" Klein's jaw tightened. "I heard your rumor. About the decoded message. I thought Trent might have left something incriminating, something that could expose me. I came to check the console, that's all." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A spy, then, but not a killer." "We shall see." He turned to Japp. "Search his lodgings, Inspector. If he speaks the truth, there may be evidence of his espionage, but not of murder." As Klein was led away, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "If Klein's telling the truth, we're back to square one. Voss or Dobbs, or someone else entirely." Poirot's expression was inscrutable. "The trap has sprung, mon ami, but the true prey is still at large. Klein's espionage is a thread, but not the whole tapestry. We must return to the tower, examine the console again. The killer's hand is still hidden, but Hercule Poirot will find it." The tower stood silent, its beacon pulsing in the dark. The trap had revealed a spy, but the murderer remained a shadow, and Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly to illuminate the truth. Chapter 11. The Final Piece. The Thornwick Inn's parlour, with its low beams and flickering fire, had become a crucible for Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth. The morning after the trap at the tower, the air was thick with the scent of damp wool and burnt toast, the mist outside pressing against the windows like a living thing. Poirot sat at the oak table, his small frame radiating quiet authority, surrounded by the familiar array of evidence: the wiring diagram, the broadcast logs, the chemist's report, and the cryptic transcript: Alpha 7, shadow falls, midnight calls. Captain Hastings, nursing a cup of tea, watched his friend with a mix of awe and impatience, while Inspector Japp, pacing by the hearth, exuded the restless energy of a man whose quarry remained elusive. "Poirot," Hastings said, setting down his cup. "Klein's confession throws a spanner in the works. He's a spy, sure enough. But if he's telling the truth about needing Trent alive, where does that leave us? Voss? Dobbs? Or some dark horse we haven't spotted?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with a faint, knowing smile. "Mon ami, the confession of Monsieur Klein is a lantern in the fog. It illuminates one path, but leaves others in shadow. He is a spy, oui, but not our murderer. The true killer is among us, their crime a masterpiece of precision. Yet every masterpiece has a flaw. He tapped the chemist's report, his finger resting on the line about the sedative. This barbiturate in the tea, it is the final piece, the thread that will unravel the tapestry. Japp stopped pacing, his face grim. We searched Klein's lodgings last night, found a cipher book and some notes on military signals, but nothing tying him to the murder. No tools, no sedatives. His receiver matches the tower's frequencies, though, so he was definitely intercepting Trent's messages. Still, he swears Trent was his source, not his target. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the details. Most interesting. Monsieur Klein's espionage is a separate crime, but it confirms the importance of the broadcasts. Trent was sending coded signals, perhaps to Klein, perhaps to another. But why was he killed? The motive lies there, in the shadows of those messages. He turned to the wiring diagram, his gaze lingering on the spliced cable. The console was rigged, the tea drugged, the room locked, all to ensure Trent's death appeared impossible. But the sedative, Inspector, what more do we know of its source? Japp pulled out his notebook. The station's medicine cabinet had a bottle of barbiturates, half empty. No log of who took them, but Voss, Dobbs, and the manager, Hargreaves, all had keys. The kettle's traces match the same drug. Someone spiked it before Trent's shift, likely in the break room. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The break room, accessible to all who worked at the station. But who prepared the tea? We must return to the station and speak with the staff again. He rose, his movements brisk. And the numbers, 3, 7, 12, on Trent's notepad. They haunt me still. We must press Mademoiselle Voss once more. The trio made their way to the radio station, the tower looming through the mist like a silent sentinel. The break room was a small, cluttered space with a chipped table, a kettle, and a shelf of mismatched cups. Poirot examined the kettle, its surface wiped clean of prints, as Japp had reported. The killer was careful, he murmured, but not careful enough. The sedative was added here, where anyone could have done it, yet only one had reason to. They summoned the station's day operator, a wiry young man named Tompkins, who fidgeted under Poirot's gaze. "I don't know about the tea, sir," he said, twisting his hands. "Trent always made his own, far as I know. The kettle's there for everyone. Voss uses it, Dobbs too, sometimes Hargreaves." Poirot's voice was gentle, but piercing. "And Mademoiselle Voss, did she prepare tea that evening, before her shift ended?" Tompkins frowned, thinking. "Come to think of it, I saw her fill the kettle around 6, before she left for the pub. Said it was for the night shift. Didn't think nothing of it." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot. 6 o'clock, he whispered. "That's before Trent's shift. She could have spiked it then." Poirot nodded, dismissing Tompkins with a nod. Most significant. Mademoiselle Voss had the opportunity, the access, and the knowledge. But why? We must confront her. Margaret Voss was summoned to the station's office, her auburn hair pulled back tightly, her dark eyes blazing with defiance. She stood, arms crossed, as Poirot faced her, his expression calm, but unrelenting. "Mademoiselle Voss," he began, "you have told us you disliked Monsieur Trent, that he was careless, a fool. You left the pub for nearly an hour, time enough to reach the tower. You had a key to the medicine cabinet, and you filled the kettle before Trent's shift. The tea was drugged, mademoiselle. What have you to say?" Margaret's face flushed, her hands clenching. "This is outrageous. Yes, I filled the kettle. It's common courtesy for the night shift. I didn't put anything in it. And I told you, I stepped out for air, not to kill anyone." Poirot's gaze held hers, and the numbers, 3, 7, 12, on Trent's notepad. "You are a code breaker, yet you claim ignorance. Are they a cipher, mademoiselle, or something more personal?" Margaret's eyes flickered, a crack in her armour. "I don't know what they mean. Trent was always scribbling nonsense. If they're a code, it's not one I ever saw." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but relentless. "You hated him, did you not? He took credit for your work, undermined your skill. Perhaps you saw a chance to be rid of him, to stage a perfect crime, a locked room, a tampered wire, a message to confuse us." Margaret's composure broke, her voice rising. "Yes, I hated him. He was a leech, always passing my code-breaking off as his own, making me look small. But I didn't kill him. I wouldn't know how to rig a console, and I didn't touch that tea." She paused, her breath ragged, then whispered, "He deserved it, though." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Deserved it, mademoiselle?" A dangerous thing to say. He turned to Japp. "Inspector, search Mademoiselle Voss's quarters. If she is innocent, there will be nothing to find. If not—" He let the words hang. As Japp's men escorted Margaret away, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "She's the one, isn't she? That outburst, it's practically a confession." Poirot's expression was inscrutable. "Not yet, mon ami. Her anger is real, but so is her fear. We must see what the search reveals." He returned to the table, picking up the broadcast logs. "The motive is tied to these signals. Trent was sending messages, perhaps to Klein, perhaps to another. If Mademoiselle Voss knew, she may have acted to stop him, or to silence him." Japp returned an hour later, his face grim. "Found something in Voss's room, a spare key to the tower, hidden in a drawer. Not the one Trent had, but a duplicate. She didn't mention it." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A duplicate key. Voila, the final piece. With it, she could lock the door after rigging the console, leaving Trent's key to create the illusion of a locked room." He rose, his movements brisk. "Mademoiselle Voss, she is our killer. The sedative, the splice, the key, all point to her hand." Confronted again, Margaret crumpled, her defiance giving way to tears. "I didn't mean for it to go so far," she sobbed. "Trent was ruining me, taking my work, my reputation. I rigged the console just to scare him. A shock, not death. I put the sedative in the kettle to keep him groggy, sent that message to throw everyone off, locked the door with the spare key. I didn't know it would kill him." Poirot's gaze was stern, but not unkind. "You played a dangerous game, mademoiselle, and a man is dead. The law will judge you now." As Japp led her away, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice soft. "The final piece, mon ami. The motive was pride, the method was cunning, but the truth always finds a way." The tower's beacon pulsed in the distance, its secrets finally laid bare by Hercule Poirot's little grey cells. Chapter 12. The signal's end. The Thornwick Inn's parlour, bathed in the soft glow of the evening fire, felt almost serene as Hercule Poirot concluded his unravelling of the tangled threads of Samuel Trent's murder. The Norfolk night pressed against the windows, the marshes outside cloaked in a silence broken only by the distant cry of a marsh bird. Poirot sat at the oak table, his small frame a picture of composure, his gloved hands neatly arranging the papers that had guided his investigation. The wiring diagram, the broadcast logs, the chemist's report, and the cryptic transcript. Alpha 7 Shadow Falls. Midnight calls. Captain Hastings, seated across from him, sipped a brandy, his face a mixture of awe and relief, while Inspector Japp leaned against the mantel, his usual gruffness softened by the resolution of the case. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, setting down his glass, "you've done it again. Margaret Voss, of all people. I thought Klein was our man, with his spying and slippery ways, but you saw right through her. How did you know?" Poirot's green eyes twinkled, his moustache twitching with a faint, satisfied smile. "Mon ami, the truth is always there, hidden in the details, waiting for the little grey cells to find it. Mademoiselle Voss wove a clever web. The locked room, the tampered wire, the drugged tea. But no web is without its flaws." He leaned back, his voice measured, as if delivering a lecture to an attentive class. "Let us reconstruct, step by step, the crime that baffled us." Japp, lighting a cigarette, nodded. "Go on, Poirot. Lay it out for us. I still can't quite believe it was her." Poirot steepled his fingers, his gaze distant yet sharp. "From the beginning, the murder of Monsieur Trent was a puzzle of precision. The locked room suggested an impossible crime, the electrocution a technical mastery, and the cryptic broadcast a deliberate misdirection. But each clue pointed to a mind both brilliant and resentful, a mind like that of Mademoiselle Voss." He picked up the wiring diagram, pointing to the spliced cable. "The console was altered with a cable from the storeroom, cut with a tool matching Monsieur Dobbs's, but accessible to all with a key. Mademoiselle Voss, as senior operator, had that access. She knew the tower's systems, not as a technician, but as one who worked daily with its rhythms. She rigged the splice during her shift, a task requiring only basic knowledge which her code-breaking precision could supply." Hastings frowned. "But the locked room, Poirot. How did she manage that?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The duplicate key, mon ami, found in her quarters. She entered the tower before Trent's shift, tampered with the console, and locked the door with the spare key, leaving Trent's own key in his pocket to create the illusion of an impenetrable room. The bolt was slid home by Trent himself, unaware of the trap, sealing his fate." Japp exhaled a cloud of smoke. "And the sedative? That was the clincher, wasn't it?" "Oui," Poirot said, tapping the chemist's report. "The barbiturate in the kettle, laced before Trent's shift, ensured he was drowsy, less likely to notice the altered console. Mademoiselle Voss filled the kettle at 6, as the day operator confirmed. A simple act, unnoticed by others. She had access to the medicine cabinet, and her resentment of Trent gave her the motive to act." Hastings leaned forward, his brow creased. "Resentment, yes, but why go to such lengths? Why not just confront him?" Poirot's gaze softened, almost pitying. "Pride, Hastings, is a powerful force. Mademoiselle Voss was a woman of intellect, a code-breaker whose work was vital, yet Trent took credit for her successes, belittled her skill. Each slight was a wound, and those wounds festered. She saw a chance to rid herself of him, to prove her superiority, and she crafted a crime she believed perfect. A murder disguised as an accident, with a cryptic message to confuse us." Japp frowned. "That message, Alpha 7, Shadow Falls, Midnight Calls. What was it then? Just a red herring?" Poirot nodded, picking up the transcript. "Précisément. Mademoiselle Voss, with her knowledge of wartime codes, crafted it to mimic the signals Trent sent, knowing it would suggest espionage and divert suspicion to Monsieur Klein. The numbers on the notepad, 3, 7, 12 were likely meaningless, a habit of Trent's she used to deepen the mystery. Her goal was to make us chase shadows while she hid in plain sight. Hastings shook his head, marveling. And Klein? His spying had nothing to do with it? Non, Poirot said. Monsieur Klein was indeed a spy, intercepting Trent's coded signals for his own purposes. But his crime was separate, his need for Trent alive genuine. Our trap exposed him, but it was Mademoiselle Voss who feared exposure most. Her confession, when confronted with the key, revealed her guilt. Japp stubbed out his cigarette. Dobbs, then? Just a red herring, too? Poirot's smile was faint. Monsieur Dobbs was careless, leaving his tools and failing to check the crate. His nervousness was that of a man who feared blame, not of a killer. The cable came from the storeroom, but it was Voss who took it, using Dobbs's tools to cast suspicion on him. Hastings sipped his brandy, his voice low. It's devilish, Poirot. She planned every detail, the wire, the tea, the key, the message, all to make it look impossible. Précisément, Poirot said, but no crime is impossible to Hercule Poirot. The human heart, it sends signals far more complex than any radio. And those signals, anger, pride, desperation, betray the guilty. He rose, his movements brisk, as if the weight of the case had lifted. The tower is silent now, its secrets laid bare. Mademoiselle Voss will face justice, and Thornwick may rest. Japp clapped Poirot on the shoulder, a rare gesture. You're a marvel, Poirot. I'd have pinned it on Klein and been done with it. How do you do it? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Order and method, Inspector. The little grey cells, they see what others miss. He turned to Hastings, his voice softening. And you, mon ami, your faith in me is a beacon, guiding me through the fog. As Margaret Voss was led away by Japp's men, her defiance replaced by a hollow resignation, the inn's parlour grew quiet. Outside, the tower stood sentinel over the marshes, its beacon pulsing faintly in the dark. The signal had ended, its mystery solved. But Poirot knew the human heart would always send new riddles, and he would be ready to answer them.